Let's begin by taking a look at some of the key elements from each chapter in the English Learner Toolkit and the additional tools and resources that support each topic area. Next slide. Chapter 1 provides information to educators about developing and using instruments and procedures for identifying potential English learners, or ELs. It covers identification instruments such as the Home Language Survey and assessments that local and state educational agencies commonly refer to as placement or screener tests. Placement screener tests are selected at the SEA level. This chapter also advises local educational agencies that identification of English learners in need of language assistance services must occur in a timely manner. In August 2022, OELA, in collaboration with Education Northwest, hosted a webinar where panelists discussed best practices and resources for facilitating refugee and immigrant students' transition into U.S. schools. The webinar covered tasks such as including scheduling considerations, academic evaluations, and options for registering newcomer students who arrive without academic credentials or who do not meet state academic requirements. The recording of this event can be accessed on the ASHA website and through the link on this slide. OELA published 2 of the 6 chapters of the English Learner Family Toolkit that provide resources for families of English learners for enrolling and supporting their children in U.S. schools. The Family Toolkit can be accessed on the National Clearinghouse for English Language Acquisition, or NCELA, website and through the link on this slide. The Institute of Education Sciences recently published a toolkit for educators of immigrant and refugee students in secondary schools. The IES Toolkit is intended to help educators and other stakeholders identify and use research-based practices, policies, and procedures for welcoming, registering, and supporting newcomer immigrant and refugee students who are attending secondary schools in the United States, as well as their families. This toolkit is designed for educators in a variety of roles who can use it in different ways. It can help district administrators develop, implement, and improve research-based practices, policies, and procedures for newcomers and offer related professional development for district and school personnel. Teachers and school counselors who direct and work in newcomer programs can use this toolkit to adopt research-based practices to support newcomer immigrant and refugee students and their families. Along with the IES toolkit, the infographic on helping newcomer immigrant and refugee students register for secondary school provides clear and comprehensive guidance for secondary school registration processes that can ensure newcomer immigrant and refugee students receive appropriate supports, credits, and course placements. The non-regulatory Title III guidance was released by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, or OESE, in 2016 and was revised in 2019. It provides states and local educational agencies with information to assist them in meeting their obligations under Title III of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, or the ESEA, as amended by the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, or ESSA, to provide supplemental services to English learners, immigrant children and youth, and their families. This guidance also provides the public with information about their rights under this law and other relevant laws and regulations. You can access these resources and more on the NCELA, OESE, and IES websites. Next slide. Before a district begins using or modifying a home language survey, it is important to first check current state educational agency requirements regarding home language survey implementation and other English learner identification process requirements the state may have. State and local educational agencies should ensure that the home language survey is provided to English learner families in a language they can understand. When developing or reviewing home language surveys, state and local educational agencies should consider including questions on the language or languages preferences for families. Adding a language preference question can inform how schools move forward with future oral and written communications from the school. Please note that the SEA, as amended by ESSA, requires SEAs that receive Title III grants, after timely and meaningful consultation with local educational agencies, to create and implement standardized statewide entrance and exit procedures for English learners and assure that all students who may be English learners are assessed for such status within 30 days of enrollment in a school in the state, as required under ESEA Section 3113 B2. We are now going to turn to our panel to discuss this topic further. Thank you. I'm so glad to have you all with us today. For our panel on Chapter 1, we have Dr. Sandra Moran, Fran Herbert, and Dr. Mary Martinez-Wenzl, and they are representing diverse perspectives from the district and state level that I'm sure they'll speak to when we get into our questions. So in the interest of time, we'll start with question 1, which is, what are the ways you ensure timely identification of English learners who are in need of EL support services, including students who enroll mid-year? And we'll start with you, Mary, for this one.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm with the Oregon Department of Education. So Oregon, like most states, requires schools to administer a home language survey as part of the enrollment process. We actually revised our language use survey earlier this year. And one of the key moves that we did was adjusting how we ask the questions so that students can report more than one home language. Many of our students come from households where they may be multilingual. Some students come into kindergarten as balanced bilinguals, speaking Spanish and English. And so we've also revised our data system to allow for really tracking that if students have multiple home languages, as well as the family's preferred language for communication. We do have an extra question on our survey for that. In addition, we put a statement right up top of our survey that really speaks to our values for equities for multilingual students. So right at the top, the first thing you see is State of Oregon honors the languages and cultures of its people and respects all languages in our schools. We encourage the revitalization and preservation of Indigenous languages and multilingualism. So, and to get to the identification issue, it's pretty straightforward. Based on the responses to the home language survey, students are administered the screener. We're an ELPA state, so that would be the ELPA screener. And that is administered by trained district or school staff under the supervision of a district test coordinator. We do direct test administrators administering the ELPA to have experience with English learners. Typically, the results are available within a week, depending on the proficiency level of the students. Students that score proficient might take additional time to ensure appropriate proficiency determinations, and then we notify parents as quickly as possible of student program determination and placement to ensure we're compliant with ASHA.
Great. Thank you, Mary, for that overview. And next we'll go to Sandra.
Yes, I'm going to speak. Hi, everyone. I'm going to speak in perspective to the local level, and I represent Illinois School Board of Education. And at the local level, I am a director of multilingual services for a little town called Wauconda, Illinois. And like many other suburbs in the area, we also administer a home language survey to our students enrolling in our districts. We ensure, now that we've gone online, we had to go take multiple measures to ensure that all our verbiage in the online home language survey is available in multiple languages as well. We also have days where families can come in during the summer or during the school year, and they have different staff available. We have different staff available who are able to assist our families if they need that assistance with the home language survey one-on-one. Many of our families do call us also for assistance if they have troubleshooting any online registration forms. So we take extra measures to ensure that we are available for them as well. Once that gets completed by the family, we set up appointments with our families to have them come in. We try to do that as soon as possible so that our students who do enroll are able to start the school year quickly. So again, we try to make sure that we have our online access available in multiple languages, and then we have personnel who is available during the school day, or if needed after school hours, to come in and complete the registration form with the assistance of a person instead of an online registration.
Great, thank you. Anything else to add?
Not at my end.
Yeah, is our third panelist available by audio?
Not yet.
Okay, well, I know that Fran Herbert is an expert in supporting students who receive special education services. One thing that we do in Oregon is that we do have accommodations for our ELPA screener, just as we do for our ELPA summative. So students can have domain exemptions and accessibility supports if needed. And really our Title III assessment and special education offices all work very closely together to ensure that those students are screened and placed appropriately. So we direct any districts to look at the Oregon Accessibility Manual and our domain exemption guidance when they're figuring out how to administer the ELPA screener for students who may have disabilities.
Great, thank you, Mary. And just to address, I see a lot of comments in the chat. We appreciate the engagement. A lot of people are interested in the value statement that you referenced, Mary. We're not going to be entering information in the chat at this time, but we'll certainly take this information back, and I'm sure can follow up with any resources that will be rolled out as we are able. So with that, I'll just check to see if Fran is able to speak to.
One moment, don't
Hi, Fran, you're live.
Hi,
And
can you hear
thank you
me?
so much for joining us. Just wanted to at least be able to get you on audio here. So we just went through question 1, which was about timely identification of ELs in need of EL support services. So wanted to see if you wanted to take a minute just to add anything from your end. Thank you.
In regards to students with disabilities, we need to look, and I can't emphasize enough the cross training and collaboration that we need to have between ELD, general ed, special education, but also our front office staff, the receptionists and whatnot that may be the ones doing the intake. With that being said, I am a strong believer in policies and procedures. So during certain circumstances, what is it that we do? So going back to students with possible disabilities, if they are coming from another state or from another district within our state, it's easier to determine if they already have an IEP. But in my experience, it's also been having conversations with parents. If, let's say, in Puerto Rico or in Mexico, they have had special education classes or have an IEP there. If that is the case, that is where it is going to be critical to have your ELD staff or your intake person collaborating with your SPED person as well. What do we do, for example, for a student who is selectively mute? How do we facilitate communication with them? Or even working with parents as well and getting information from the parents in terms of the child's ability to communicate, is there a disability, etc. So it's really important for having collaborative teams, cross training of those collaborative teams, but it's really also very important the people that are doing the intake, that they are aware of procedures or policies that are very explicit for them to be able to follow and have that support ahead of time.
Thank you so much, Fran. And in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the second question, which is, what steps do you take to establish a welcoming environment and make the goals of the home language survey, screener, and EL services clear to families? And Fran, we'll go ahead and start with you for this one.
Sure. And first and foremost, I can't emphasize enough how we need to honor diversity, different cultures, and the family units. We do know that there are some cultures that are patriarchal, matriarchal, or the elders will come with the parents. So we need to do a little bit of background information or research in terms of different cultures and how to approach and interact. Culturegrams are a wonderful way to do that. And The other thing too is we need to be very clear on why we're asking the questions that we're asking. In my experience, sometimes people misunderstood, the parents, the families, why we were asking these questions. And we need to make sure that, we explain to them that this is about education and giving their students, their children, all the supports that they need. Therefore, making it clear that this has nothing to do with legal status, immigration, anything like that. And those questions have come up in the districts that I have worked in. So that's the first thing, making sure that people are feeling welcome and that their culture is being honored. The other thing too is I think we need to personalize our outreach. And then by that I mean trying ongoing training and support for those staff members in our districts that are helping the families fill out the home language surveys, how to go about, approaching them and working with families. I did mention already collaborative partnerships and cross trainings with other professionals, but I think sometimes we forget the family unit, collaborating with them, and also community centers, community leaders, churches, colleges, etc. In one of the districts that I worked in many years ago, we would bring them in to do some cross training with staff. And then the other thing too is I think, what about cultural mediators? Do we hire cultural mediators? And a lot of times these can be parents that have gone through the process. They're embedded in the community. They speak the language. They're familiar with the culture. Can they be the staff that supports the district staff in filling out the HLS and making it a really welcoming environment for the families so that they're feeling comfortable? And the last thing I want to say is we shouldn't be afraid to ask questions of the families. And I'm going to give a real quick example here. I remember one time I was meeting with a Native American family, and I noticed that unintentionally or inadvertently, I was building a wall between the family and myself. And I just kind of stopped and said, I think I've said something that may have offended you. Help me understand. And that wall came down, and it was a much more welcoming and positive experience.
Thank you for those examples. And I'll go to Sandra for additional input from the district level, and then we'll go to Mary.
Yes. Well, Fran mentioned a lot of different key points. I think what I want to add on to it is the importance of having a bilingual parent advisory committee, council, as many may call it. And that is such a powerful asset to a district. They are the voice, they are the advocates, and they help you navigate just different events or resources or different challenges that the district and some of the families may be facing. I seek a lot of advice from my bilingual parent advisory council. They help me plan events. I review the funding with them. We have a yearly field trip, and if there's any needs that some of the family members within the community are afraid to reach out maybe to an administrator, they do reach out to the advisory council, and then the advisory council communicates with me. I think it's a very powerful tool to have a parent advisory council within your district, because again, you form all these bonding, you get to know the community better, and then you teach the families how to advocate for what the needs are of whatever population is in most needed, dependent in what suburb they may live or what language is the most predominant in that area. So I can't speak highly enough of having an active BPAC in your institution. My current president was a BPAC member for almost 20 years. He was the president, and he just was instrumental in making so many changes and so many great events possible. And I think I established a lot of bonding with the community by having those connections with families.
Great. And Mary, we've got about a minute for you on this one, and then
Yeah.
we'll give you first word on the last question. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, as we heard from other panelists, we need multilingual staff members and families at the table to help with this. I would add, we also need to adequately compensate our talented multilingual staff members for those skills. Some of our districts do that. We have a bilingual pay differential at the state level, but it's not statewide policy for educators at this time in Oregon. I mentioned briefly, we try to put up top of the language use survey how much we value multilingualism. And at the state level, much of what we do is in setting guidance and policy. We take the position that English learners have a lot of needs and assets that extend far beyond their level of English language proficiency. Two key things that we do in that area. One, we really encourage districts, especially with students at the secondary level, to have clear policies and procedures for evaluating international schooling experiences and transcripts and making sure that those credits transfer over in the correct content area with a letter grade. I think that really shows students, not that we're saying we welcome you, but we see that you have a lot of valuable knowledge and expertise, and we're going to count it towards your diploma if it's aligned with our standards. We've also changed our diploma requirements. So we've done away with the English requirement and replaced it with a language arts requirement and made it very clear to all of our districts that students can read, write, think critically, meet the Common Core language arts standards in English or Spanish or Russian or any language. As long as the course is aligned with our content standards, they're eligible for credit. And that's really removed some barriers to high school graduation, especially for our newcomer immigrant students who enter schools later on.
Great, thank you. And staying with Mary, we'll go to our last question, which is, how do you build capacity with your state or district among the staff who are responsible for the identification processes?
Yeah, well, we have lots of talented, dedicated staff members here at the Oregon Department of Education. So our Title III team works really closely with our assessment team. Everyone, as I said earlier, has to be trained. The test administrators need to have had experience with English learners, and the training is ongoing. We provide training on the use and purpose of our home language survey and the ELPA screener. The trainings include time for staff to collaborate and share strategies. And we are always fielding questions and emails and meeting with districts as needed to provide technical assistance. And then we have also some really wonderful learning communities through our districts and university partnerships.
Great. And Sandra, over to you.
Yes, for our staff, I make sure that every year we review our screener. Screeners can be very when everybody interprets rubrics differently. So it's very important that we review our speaking and our writing rubrics for our screener that we use for the access or the WIDA screener. And so I ensure that at least every year we do a little review and we review our rubrics as well and make sure that we feel comfortable. Again, what are the nuances of any changes that SB might have in regards to screening or any exceptions that are made available for students that we are going ahead and screen for that academic school year. So again, just like everyone else is mentioning, it is crucial that we just provide as much PD, review about the policies and how to adequately screen a student or how to adequately set accommodations for a student that might have a disability as well, and we need to screen.
Thank you. And over to Fran.
I just want to add a couple of things. We also need to make sure that the staff that is responsible for working with our second language learners and identifying them appropriately have resources available to them and they know where to get them. And then lastly, piggybacking on what Mary said, partnering with institutions of higher ed, your colleges, I really do think that it's important for us in the field, whether we're at the state level or at a district level, to maybe go and visit teacher prep programs and let them know some of the logistics or some of the things that are reality. I remember, sitting in a classroom, what I read in the textbooks, what I was being told was a whole different picture when I went into the field. So how do we partner more, both the state folks and the district folks, with teacher prep programs or colleges so that teachers are better prepared?
Thank you so much. We've heard a lot of great themes here in terms of honoring home languages and cultures, about collaboration within the same level at the state or district level, and then across levels. And just really appreciate all of the information provided today. And we'll be following up on some of these resources that folks seem eager to learn more about. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our organizers.